This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer?
Experts in the Wire, episode 29. Alessandra Colaci. Hey everyone, there's probably a lot of us out there that we keep hearing about live streaming. That is like Facebook Live and Periscope, but we're not sure how to get started or what to even do with it. So if you're one of those people like I am, now is definitely the time to get involved. Periscope reported to have 10 million users by August 2015. So that's almost a year ago. So that number is surely to have grown. By March of 2016, Periscope had over 200 million broadcasts. And I'm sure that number is a lot higher now as well. So it's really one of the next big waves in social media that's just starting to explode. Even Facebook Live has really exploded in the last few months. Personally, I've experimented with Periscope. So that's when I had the opportunity to speak to this week's guest. I was really excited to do so. And I think my guess is there's probably a lot of you out there that are interested in experimenting with live video as well. Alessandra Colaci is the founder of Influence Buzz. She is a speaker, a business and startup consultant, and podcaster herself. She has worked with clients like Coke, TJ Maxx, and Warner Brothers. And she has been into live streaming video since the very beginning. So she has a lot of information to offer. In this interview, we chat about the differences between Periscope, Facebook Live, and Blab, how to convince your CEO or boss to get on live video, or maybe your client to get on live video, what to do and what content to share, how to get people to watch your live streaming content, what someone like Rand Fishkin should do with Periscope. Yes, I asked her what she thought Rand should do, and I make a confession. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode of Experts in the Wire with Alessandra Colaci. I'm very excited to have you on the show to talk all about live streaming, but before we jump into that, can you set up with a quick 60 to 90 second background on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into the whole online space pretty early on, worked on web design first, and that was kind of my background. Did graphic design, web design for clients. And that, out of college, I had a kind of a web design agency and started to build sites for people, but I wanted to see how could I market those sites and get people to them. So then I was like, hey, let me do my own thing. Let me start my own website. And so about 2005, I had my first startup, which was back in the days of MySpace, early old school social media. And nobody really even knew what social media was at that point. And so that grew really big to about 21 million visitors. And was like kind of the golden days of the early social media. And then after that, went back to the corporate world, worked with some clients on the side, did consultancies for Fortune 500 companies and small businesses. And then more recently got, back into having my own business. And I teach people how to get visible online, so increase their visibility in order to get known and get their business known. And so that's what I'm doing now for about the past 6 months.
Awesome. And so your day-to-day now is kind of consulting, training, speaking, sort of that kind of stuff?
Right. So I do a lot of different things. Mostly I teach, I do coaching. So if it's like I call them strategy sessions. So I'll do strategy sessions with businesses. A lot of times they're stuck on something, or they're early stage and they're like, how do I start? Or they're in the middle of their business and they're really trying to figure out how to grow that and how to gain visibility because they feel like they're just not getting seen enough. So I'll work with them on a one-on-one basis, or I do a lot of free teaching. So I'll do online, especially online videos and live videos around different topics of business.
Awesome. So just for my own curiosity, as an example, what are some types of businesses that you might work with now? Are these big businesses, small, e-commerce, local? What's an example?
Mostly, so when I do consulting, it's mostly like mid-sized software as a service or app companies. Mm-hmm. But lately, I've been doing a lot more work with the small companies who are the solopreneurs. So they're early stage, or they're someone who's really wanting to get out of the corporate world and wanting to, start the side business, start working on that. And so that's something I'm really passionate about because I think people feel like ill-equipped for that, and they're just looking at how do I do that, and they just need the tools and the resources, the knowledge to start that kind of down that line.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into live streaming. Let's just get right into it. I'm very excited to talk about this. I've experimented a little with Periscope on my own, but I think the listeners are probably going to be very curious about how they can utilize live streaming, and also myself too, because I'm sure after we talk, some of the ideas you give me, I'm probably going to want to apply to my own situation. But let's just set this up. So like, is live streaming for everybody? Is there certain types of businesses or people, or do you kind of recommend everyone give it a try right now? Who should be doing live streaming?
Yeah, and a lot of people wonder that, and they're like, well, my niche couldn't possibly benefit from it. But really anyone, it's kind of like any social media platform that you have to be a part of it. This is something that the trend in years coming are going to be where, video is going to be the biggest thing that you can do to get to stand out and to get visible. And live streaming is an extension of that, but times 10, because you're building that relationship. So I think I always tell people marketing is so much of selling a lifestyle, whatever that lifestyle may be, or, whether it's a service or product based, you're selling the benefit and the kind of vision that people have of that. And so along with that, you can do so many different types of content that are going to build into your brand and the awareness of what you're doing and really humanize it, I think, which a lot of people don't do, right? They don't do enough of that humanizing of their business and their brand. So I think it's one of those things that everyone can do no matter what your business is.
Absolutely. So I know right away, a lot of people, like I'm fairly comfortable on video. I like doing video, but a lot of people are super uncomfortable with it. So if we're talking about a business, is it a matter of finding the right person that can kind of be the face of the company, or how does that kind of work exactly or apply for a business?
Yeah, I think, it's one of those things where I've created video content for businesses where I try to take a variety of people from the company and get them in front of the camera. And you're going to kind of see that some people are better at it and some people aren't. So I think it doesn't hurt to get people in front of the camera that aren't amazing at it, because it still shows the human side. And if, let's say, there's someone that's in a certain department that you really want to feature on surfacing content around what they're doing and what that department's doing, it's okay if they're not that great on camera. It's okay. It's not going to be something that I think people look at it and are like saying, oh, I don't want to watch your content anymore. It might actually even give them a feeling that this is the real deal. This is something that's like, very, very human side of this company. So I think kind of play with it, but also every person who's going to do it is going to get better at it over time. So whether it's a CEO, I think people who are really important key figureheads should be in front of the camera. And it'll just take a little bit of that kind of coaching and them doing it more often to get more comfortable with it. But they should absolutely be in front of the camera.
So are there any kind of tricks to get people that are camera shy just to start to get them in front of the camera? Because I could see a lot of CEOs that are super hesitant. And I've even brought this forth to clients before, telling them you should be on video more, and they resist that. So are there any tricks for getting them to get started? I mean, this is like a super personal platform in a lot of ways where like it's just their mobile phone. So how do we get camera shy people to kind of get going?
Yeah, I think, with Facebook Live, it's a really good platform to just have something be really kind of not a lot of pressure, not something that they're announcing some big thing, but say like talk about some of the stuff that we just introduced recently or something like that. Do something where it's like not something that's a high pressure for them, but really it's a matter of them trying it that first time and seeing that there's a very supportive community usually behind that. And I think for me, even going live on Periscope was something that was like I had done video before and it was still something that was scary, but I think you have to just tell yourself in that moment, as you're about to do the video and before you're about to do it, tell yourself how much of a benefit that's going to be for your business. So I think any CEO understands that if we're going to improve the bottom line and the visibility and the customer base because we do this, then, they'd be willing to take that risk. And then you can tell them, it doesn't have to be the best video ever. Just start it and you'll see that there's really a positive feedback.
Should they prepare what they're going to do or talk about ahead of time? Because I know when I've tried Periscope, and this is just my personality, oftentimes I just kind of let things go impromptu without much of a plan. And that works for me sometimes, but should other people maybe have a little bit more of a plan or even a script or some kind of outline?
I think people know what kind of a personality they are, right? So like for me, I can really just kind of go off the cuff and I at least I have an idea of the concept or what it's going to be about, but I don't have to sit there and outline every little thing. And that even in my case, a lot of times when I outline too much, I get too stuck on making sure that I'm covering all those points, and it's not as freeform as live video should be. But on Periscope, or even the different platforms, it's kind of different. So Periscope is very freeform. You can go on there and just even quote unquote like hang out with people and chat with them. And it's great. And that's building a really good community that's really, really loyal. On Facebook, people have really short attention spans. So you don't want to go on there and really just kind of like chat and hang out and let it go for 3 hours. You want to be a little more direct and calculated, where you have maybe some main points, and you make sure that you don't go like too long, where if you're repeating yourself, it's not really that effective.
Interesting. So there are differences between Periscope and Facebook Live. So I've done Periscope, but not Facebook Live, and I'm kind of interested in maybe trying that. I know in Periscope, even once I just started broadcasting as I was walking into my office and surprised one of my employees, and we just started chatting about what he was doing, and it was totally like, it might have even been slightly boring to an extent. But so you're saying like something like that on Facebook probably won't work. Like you need to kind of plan it out a little bit ahead of time. Like what's an example of something that you would broadcast on Facebook?
So on Facebook, like I think if you could do, let's say if you were an e-commerce site, you could have a product that's coming out and do a sneak peek. So you could say, here are 3 things that we're going to have on the site in the next month or something like that, and do a sneak peek and really get people excited about that, but not, go on and on, just kind of have a really like concise part about each product. If you're more of an informational or service-based organization, what works really well is just teaching people things, and people love that kind of content. I was kind of surprised because I thought, for example, with Facebook Live and Periscope, that works well. And I thought people are going to kind of tune out because it's not, it's not necessarily entertaining. If you can be entertaining and informational and inspirational, that's the perfect thing. That's like the perfect combination. But even if you're one of those things, that's okay. If you're just informational and you're educating people, then they still, they may tune in and they may share it with their network, because usually they kind of surround themselves with similar people. So, you may teach them a skill set. Like for example, with you have great content around SEO, and you can teach them something around that. And just kind of break it down into bite-sized chunks, maybe even like a series of things or something like that you do over a week or a month or something like that.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw in a slight curveball here. I have a client that's in the kind of industrial space. They make like asset tags. That these things are on like the F-35 fighter jet and 18-wheeler trucks and like oil rigs and everything. Like, can a company like that in an extreme industrial kind of space use something like Facebook Live or Periscope? I
think so, because the thing I really love about these live platforms is that it's quick content creation without overthinking it. And so, that's not always the case. I do some shows that are a little bit more produced, at least in terms of the kind of the layout, and they have overlays and all that kind of stuff. And then I do off the cuff kind of really quick ones. But no matter what, having it live, you don't sit there and overthink like, okay, well, what is this like amazing thing? Because it's going to take a lot of time for us to edit it and all that kind of stuff. So something like that, there's a very like specific audience for that. Obviously, it's not super broad and wide, but the core audience for them, they may be able to show them, use cases or like success stories, case studies, things like that, to say like, here are how people are using this. And here are our customer stories, actually interview customers that are willing to go on camera and that kind of stuff. And even if it's, no matter how kind of obscure or niche it is, there's going to be an interest in what they can do to either maximize the use or let their dollars go further, or whatever the case may be. So I think with that, they just have to think like, what kind of content will we normally create, and how can we integrate that into video?
So like how long is a good live broadcast? Do you just feel it out and kind of gauge when interest is dying down and then just stop it? Or what's a good rule of thumb there?
Yeah, I think so. For example, with Periscope, since people get the notification, a lot of times they'll come in right away, and there's an ebb and flow. For that, there's a lot of people who are coming in and then leaving, and then new people coming in and leaving. Or some people will stay the whole time, and some people will stay for an hour. They'll stay for the whole thing because they may treat it like a webinar, or they may treat it like hanging out with a friend or whatever, depending on the kind of content. And in that case, it's a little bit more focused because it's within one app that's just for live streaming. And they kind of know it's like going to watch TV. They know that they're taking the time to go do that. And then on Facebook Live, I found that the timeline's really, it's a large range, but a lot of times people don't stay as long. So you want to make the replay of that video as effective as possible, where they can probably get some good value out of the first 5-10 minutes. And you still have to kind of intro and do that opening, but half an hour is great, an hour is okay, but just if it's something that you have good content for half an hour, go ahead. If it's something you have good content for 15 minutes, that's fine. I'd say any less than that starts to become the live aspect of it is not very useful, because people are coming in and they're just like seeing you on their phone and they're saying, oh, okay, I have to have the time to react to it, see it on my phone, and go in and actually interact. So if you make it too short, like 5 minutes or something like that, you're not really going to have people have time to come in and interact with you. And so I'd say at least 15, but 30 minutes is great. An hour is even okay if you're doing it more like a webinar kind of a thing.
Yeah, totally. So speaking of replaying, I barely follow this stuff. Periscope now allows you to save the video forever. Is that correct?
Exactly. And so that was something that more recently they introduced where you'd add a hashtag to save it, but now it's just the default. So Periscope was always 24 hours, and 24 hours, the video would disappear. There was a startup called Catch that is no longer, unfortunately, that used to save and have like a page for all your replays. And then now Periscope introduced it natively. So you can go in, and if you do a broadcast, then it'll stay on your page for forever until you want to delete it, or you can just keep it on there. And then the same thing with Facebook was always like that with Facebook Live. So with Facebook Live, the replay always stays on your page, and it's something that with that, there's really a large, because Facebook, because of the organic reach and because of Facebook really boosting that in the first 24 hours, the first 3 days are really big. The second day is actually usually the biggest day, even in terms of views, just depending on the content. Some content goes incredibly, viral, as we've seen with there's been some Facebook Live viral videos already within the first day or two. And then they really have like just a spurt of activity, and then it kind of dies off. So it's a little different than YouTube, because YouTube, they have YouTube Live and things like that, but it's more like long term. It's lower volume over time kind of thing.
Okay, so Periscope, when it said that they now save it forever, does that mean if I go into Periscope and look at you as a user, I can now see all of your videos, or does it mean that it saves to your phone automatically?
It'll save all of them on there. So it'll have a number that's basically all the broadcasts that are archived. And so if you did 100 broadcasts, it would show 100. You can click in and scroll through and see any of those. And they're getting better to it, even analytics and things like I think the strength that Facebook had even early on was the analytics. If you were broadcasting on a page, then you'd at least have some analytics around there. With Periscope, you didn't really have any of that. You'd have to use third-party tools and things like that. But you'd at least see, how much people were watching and how active they were and some of that stuff. And now they're kind of integrating a little bit more of that.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about analytics, which will shift a little bit into audience development on these platforms. Because one question that pops in my head is, okay, I'm the industrial company, or I'm somebody running a service business. How do I get people to actually see my content to begin with? Like, let's say I want to do my very first Periscope. If I don't already have a lot of Twitter followers or people following me, like, how do you get eyeballs on your live content?
Yeah, and I think you treat it kind of the same as if you were publishing a blog post, but the difference is that you have the out ahead of it. You can promote it and say that you want people to watch live. So, you can a week even ahead, if it's a really big announcement, maybe you can start to talk about it and say a week from now, this date, we're going to have this. On some platforms, it's upcoming on Facebook that you're going to be able to schedule things out. But on Periscope, it's not something you can schedule. So it's something you can just say this day we're doing this, and this is why you should join in. So you could talk about that on your newsletter, on your blog, on your social channels, and then even day of, you kind of stack it as it comes to the time that you're live. and you do a 15 minutes out, you say we're going live, and then when you're live, you say live now kind of thing. Especially the live now, you can push that a couple times while you're live so that you can have people coming in and finding you through your other social media channels and coming into that. But with Twitter, what's good with Periscope, for example, is on the Twitter feed, when you're live, you will show and it'll show actually natively on the Twitter platform. So what's great about that is you potentially have organic content, even if you're not necessarily pushing it out. They're seeing you as they're scrolling through the newsfeed and maybe coming into that live at that time.
Are there ways to build followers within Periscope? So like somebody that doesn't follow me on Twitter, but for some reason decides to follow me inside of Periscope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's interesting is for me, for example, most of the people that I follow and follow me are not people that I necessarily follow on Twitter. I think the content is very different. So on Twitter, I'm interested in more like kind of news, and I like tech news on there and stuff like that. But on Periscope, I'm interested in people who are either great interactors and engage within broadcasts. So they may not even be broadcasters, but they're people who I really just like to build that relationship with. And so I think the key thing, though, with any of this is like a lot of times as marketers, we want to do the broadcasting, and whether that's like literally a live broadcasting or that's broadcasting content out where you're sending out, just content about your company, it has to be that balance. So I found where getting involved in the community, whatever community that is, and being an active participant is actually one of the biggest ways to build your own following too, because you engage with people, they start to see, like, let's say your notification came up that you were live. If they know you, they're going to pay attention to that. If they don't know you, they're going to be like, oh, I don't know, I have to weigh whether I want to watch this. So building followers within each kind of separate channel, whether that's Periscope, Facebook Live, or now YouTube Live, you can still do that for sure. And I think you can then, in addition to that, kind of transfer your people from other platforms and say, hey, go follow me, and remind them that you're at that place too.
Interesting. So like you can build and interact with communities natively within Periscope. Like let's say, so I'm interested in SEO and marketing. So I can actually follow and engage with people that are live streaming on those topics. And so like by engaging, do you mean like commenting during the actual stream and then other people see that comment? Is that one of the things?
Yeah. And I think even showing that you have an interest in that and you're also an expert in that space. So I might go into someone's broadcast that's talking about a similar topic that I talk about, visibility or social media or something like that. And I'm engaging with other people, commenting, replying to them and all that stuff. But I also can inject any kind of things that I've learned on that topic. So if I want to say, here's a tip, or if I want to kind of piggyback on some of the things that the broadcaster's saying and say, that's really great advice, and here's what else I found, or something like that, then people start to say, oh, okay, there's actually another expert here in the comments, and there's someone who's providing extra value. And also the broadcaster kind of feels that that's an added value that you're giving, kind of a thing. So they may pay attention to you more. So I think really just, it's like with any of these things, building those one-to-one relationships actually goes really far with even building your brand and your visibility.
What's your take on what user behavior might be? Like if I'm watching a broadcast and I see somebody else interesting comment, will users typically then go check out that person's profile? Is that common behavior?
Yeah, it is on Periscope. So on Periscope, it's really easy as a mechanism to just click on someone since you're on the phone. You can just click on their profile and check them out without having to leave that broadcast. So that's really important, I think, is not having to leave the space that you're in and not feeling like, oh, I don't want to click on them. So you click on them and then you check them out. It's a really quick kind of thing, which is why that snap judgment is really important for us to think about, is that your bio and your picture and all that kind of stuff is so important, because people are going to be checking you out even as you're interacting with other broadcasters, or if you're broadcasting yourself. They'll see you in the list of live videos and they may say, okay, this person broadcasting, let me quickly check their bio and make a judgment really fast on whether I should watch them or not. And so, or whether I should follow them or not. So I think that happens on the fly a lot more on especially on Periscope. But I have found even on Facebook, we started a new page for one of our podcasts, and it was a brand new page. We're like, okay, let's not promote it too much, because we have a lot of other, me and my co-host have our own pages as well. So we're like, let's just kind of keep this under the radar but broadcast from that page for our show. And so we do live videos from it. And I was shocked because when we had shows that were live that had really good, view rates, we would get a lot of organic people liking that page as well. And it was way more than we get, even if we were kind of, sending out invites and asking people to like. It was really natural and organic. And it was a byproduct of them watching the live video or discovering us through people sharing and then liking our page.
Awesome. So one other question about discovery in Periscope. Do you find hashtagging and or location to help people discover you? Because I'll give you an example. Like most of my Periscopes, 99% of them are about SEO or marketing, but I happen to be at a music performance at a place I was a musician. I used to play music gigs, and I was at a performance and I decided to live Periscope it. I might have tagged it music, or it was salsa music, so salsa or something like that, but somehow 20 people started watching this that I didn't even know, and I didn't know how I got them to actually discover that live broadcast of music in there. So how do you think they found that? Was it what I typed, or was it my location, or like what exactly was going on there?
Yeah, and it can be a combination of all of those things. So I think, the key thing is when you make a title, if it's something that you're trying to teach someone, then show them what that benefit is. It's the same as if you'd make a title for anything. If you're making a title for a blog post or anything, that's really key. So people are going to discover you and who's live and just see you. And then there's the local aspect, but I think local is only beneficial in as much as if it's something that's a targeted kind of thing, right? So if you are a local company and you have a retail store, then that's super powerful because there's a large number of people who potentially could be your customers, and they're discovering you because they're looking at what's there locally. So that you could have some big wins on. And if you're, I always say like getting followers or getting people watching who are not related to what your overall focus is not that valuable. But if you're putting keywords and hashtags that are targeted to them, then yeah, they're doing searches or they're looking for topics and they're finding you. And maybe there's the added benefit of people who are local that you could also network with in person that are finding you with that too.
Awesome. So if I want to just sum up for the listener, like a little checklist for Periscope, and then I want to talk about Facebook, essentially everyone should create their account, whether they're a person or a business. They should be following and interacting with other people in their related topics and industries. They should be just starting and publishing content, using good titles, maybe promoting themselves by announcing it ahead of time, making sure they show up in the Twitter feed and all that. Is there anything else you would add in terms of like for Periscope as a platform for people that want to get started?
Yeah, I think Periscope is a bit more of a growth kind of thing because it's more organic, but at the same time, it's not Facebook. And so what's nice about Periscope is I feel like you can grow an audience more organically there, but you're not necessarily going to have the same numbers as you would on Facebook. The benefit of that is that at least you're not like playing in the space where it's like the largest and most competitive thing, right? So what I like too is that I feel like it's more of a kind of a casual hangout thing on Periscope. You can have content that's not as like, well planned out, and you can really have more of that engagement, and the engagement's huge on there. So on Periscope, you'll get a lot more comments versus some other platforms like Facebook Live. So the benefit of that is if you need feedback for your product, if you need feedback for your business, if you're trying to ask the audience what they want, if you're trying to get an idea of what topics work well to maybe even use on other platforms or other live streams, that's a good place to do it. And it's also a good place to kind of like practice and to start to do it there, because I feel like sometimes people feel a little bit more protective of like their Facebook page, and they are like, oh, I'm freaked out to go live there as the first place that I go live. So Periscope's a really good kind of starting ground for that stuff. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. I'm going to echo that. I mean, Periscope, because like 10 people will watch my broadcast, it's been a great place to practice just speaking. Okay, let's talk about Facebook Live. I have a confession to make, and that is that I don't use Facebook at all. I don't have a personal page. I don't manage business pages. One of my contractors runs ads for some clients, but I have very little experience on Facebook. So this might be a question just more for myself at first. So sorry, listeners, just bear with us for a second. But I've seen that you can have a personal page, but you can also have a business page, and I can be like a business person on there. And that was the direction I wanted to head in, because I'd love to kind of go towards doing Facebook Live content. So for me, or for somebody else that's a solo business person, would you recommend that they do this on a business page or a personal page? Does it not matter? What's kind of the pros and cons there?
So I would say do both, but what I do is sometimes I'll do one on my business page and I'll share it to my personal page, or I'll share it to other places that I can share that on. And that's really beneficial because I think you get kind of the network effect where it combines with your business followers and fans and the people who are connected to you personally on your personal profile. However, I think just in kind of testing, it really depends on your engagement and your audience on that business page already. So let's say you already have good engagement and good, a large number of people that are following you, you're probably going to have better results on your business page. If you're very engaged and you're actually, have a lot of good connections on your personal page, I think that fewer people, kind of do live content from their personal page. And it's something that if Facebook has like less signal to noise kind of ratio, right, with that. So it's kind of one of those things where they're going to say, okay, this person's doing this and maybe they don't post a lot and maybe people are sharing it or liking it. And versus if you do it on business page, there's just so many pages that people like. So potentially you get lost in the mix. But if you mix it up and at least focus on maybe one, but have the secondary one that you at least do some live videos from that. And you may see that one's working better than the other. Got it.
So for somebody like me, I'm starting totally from scratch from both. I literally have my personal account is totally on lockdown. No, you can't find it. Like don't exist on Facebook. Yeah. My business account, I created just the profile and I have like one like on the whole page. I've never posted any content. So I'm kind of hesitant to run or think about two pages, right? So let's suppose I just want to do one. I'm completely going from scratch. Do you recommend one over the other, personal versus business?
Business is one of those things where if it's, especially depending on your behavior, like for me, I'm completely, what people might call open networker kind of person, where I just am like, whoever wants to contact me, if they don't look like a spammer, then I'll probably let them, add me on my personal page. If you're someone who wants to build that brand and the business brand, and you don't really have a personal brand, then I think the business page really works well because you can potentially get even more organic reach and growth by doing Facebook Live on that page. So people may discover you and find you through that content. And let's say you mostly focus on Twitter right now or something like that. You can bring that audience over to that page and really kind of convert them to that too, and tell them, okay, I have this Facebook Live coming up. Please watch that. And then they just say, oh, by the way, I'm going to like this page, But I think that's kind of the key thing is like whatever your focus is in that moment, because the other thing is if you're building a community, you potentially can actually, instead of building up a Facebook page, you can build a Facebook group. And groups are, because they show in notifications, they get a lot of like organic kind of engagement and discussions and all that kind of stuff. And people think of them as less of like I'm following a brand, more of like I'm a part of this movement or this community kind of thing.
Got it. So it really sounds like what I have to align it with what my intentions are and how I want to use the platform, and the whole groups and community is like a whole other thing. So I need to learn about that too. And I was considering making a group or community for this podcast, among the other 1,000 things I want to do. But anyway, so let's talk about somebody that's got maybe more of an established page. How can they get started in Facebook Live? Because you mentioned that this platform might require a little bit more prep and something slightly more polished than Periscope, which is a little more raw. So what are kind of the steps to take ahead of time before maybe doing your first live broadcast?
Yeah, I think for Facebook, if you have content that you've done already, that let's say you did a post on, that was an image, or you did a blog post or something, that content that already exists in some other form factor that you're like, this did really well, we got good feedback. People were maybe commenting on it or liking it or sharing it or any of those kind of things, especially if they were sharing it, then you can really use that as something that you say, I gauge that this content could do well as just a different form factor. And what's really great about that is if you said, okay, let's do that as our first Facebook Live, or even you can just do an intro if you want to get comfortable with it and be like, I just want to get familiar with how to use this. Because I think at first you're like, oh my gosh, I can't multitask this much because it's like there's comments and stuff like that, So you could even do just an intro. I've done that on groups where I join the groups and I did a Facebook Live as an intro, and I was shocked at how many views it got because I'm like, I'm just doing a quick intro, but people like that kind of content too if you're just like kind of showing the human side. So look at other content, and then also think through, once you start to get more in a habit and a pattern of creating those live videos, think through what you want to do with them afterwards and plan the content around that. So let's say you have an upcoming webinar or you have an upcoming product that you're selling or something like that. Kind of work backwards from that and see what kind of topics you can talk about on Facebook Live, and then what ways you can repurpose that. So repurposing is huge. And I always tell people repurpose in as many ways as you can. When you're doing a live video or video, what's so great about that is that you can take an image, you can take an audio snippet, you can take the video, you can do a transcript of it. There's so many ways that you can use it afterwards. So it goes so much further if you have the video as the original piece of content.
Awesome. Yeah. One thing I've noticed Gary Vaynerchuk doing is he has his Ask Gary Vee show, and he started to use Facebook Live to do the actual show. So he'll do the show live and take the questions right in the stream. Is that, is something like that another way that you could use Facebook Live, doing kind of like a live broadcast call-in type show?
Yeah, so you can, Facebook now is introducing where people can drop in as guests, and it's not rolled out yet. My best guess is that maybe a month from this broadcast, we're going to, it's going to be rolled out. But what's really cool about that is that you could literally take people that are friends of yours or connections and bring them into that live. So not just getting them in the comments, but getting them on video. What I've been using, so I do a show, and sometimes, we're planning on having guests. I use Wirecast, which is a software that you can bring in multiple video sources. You can have Skype people call in, or you could have Zoom or anything like that. And you can also have different cameras and stuff like that. So it's kind of a higher end production level. But there's also one called Open Broadcasters software that's an open source tool that you can broadcast to YouTube Live or Facebook Live. And you can create like more kind of sources. So you can have people calling you even on Skype or something like that. And that's really, really cool and really powerful.
Oh, wow. So I could do a live broadcast of this podcast.
Exactly. You could. So that's what for me and my co-host on the We Mean Business show, we do a live broadcast of our show. And so our show is first a Facebook Live. She calls in on Skype, and then I kind of have us as a split screen. And then I use, we can use the audio afterwards for the podcast. And so it's really powerful because we can just pull the audio off of the video that Facebook gives us. Or what I'm exploring now is at the same time, because we're doing it on a desktop, I can use other tools to record the audio separately as we're doing it, just in case anything happens to the video or anything like that. But it's really, really cool because, we were able to put in like video overlays or graphics, or if we have an opt-in or something like that, we can pop that onto the screen and show them, on the screen. And even with Wirecast, what's really cool is you can bring in Twitter tweets for specific hashtags. So let's say you say while you're doing the live show, a lot of times people are using multiple devices or something like that, or they're watching on their computer, and you can tell them to go to Twitter and use a hashtag, and it'll roll through the things that people are saying.
Oh, wow. So this is really cool. I'm getting a little excited for Facebook Live. So you can actually, how does this work exactly? Because I just assumed or thought it worked like Periscope, where you just use your phone. But like, how does that work with the software? So you've got like what was it called? Something Cast?
Wirecast. Yeah.
Wirecast.
So Wirecast and Open Broadcasters software are the two. And what happens is that Facebook, when you go live, they now have an open API. And so these tools are able to pull the URL for that feed basically. And so with Open Broadcaster software, it's a much more, not much more, but it's a more complicated thing where you have to kind of like do an initial thing, grab that URL, grab the API key, and then put it into the information and put it into the settings and all that. With Wirecast, it's like you just log into your Facebook page and you can go live from a Facebook page, from your personal profile, or even from a group. And so the groups are really powerful. Right now, the API is kind of weird where groups you usually have to do with your phone. But at least from Facebook pages and personal profiles, you can go live with these different tools. And this is kind of the beginning of it, right? Because now that they have an API, people are going to be able to develop a lot of great tools for this and plugging in different things to Facebook Live. So the native kind of things that Facebook's going to bring in very soon are that you can schedule content, you can schedule broadcasts ahead of time. which is great. You could have a waiting room so people can be sitting there kind of interacting before you go live. So you don't have to do the kind of prep and like, hey, we're just waiting for more people to come in, which a lot of people do at first. It's like, oh, we're just kind of sitting here waiting for people to come in. And then also where you can drop in guests and have people come in if they're friends with you on Facebook. So that's upcoming natively within Facebook Live.
Oh, wow. So all of this really means that Facebook will continue to just take over the world.
Oh, absolutely. I always tell the story. I was reading an article about how, when Mark Zuckerberg realized how all in they were going to go on Facebook Live, because he got really excited about it in February. And it was like they had it for a few months, but mostly celebrities and stuff like that. But when he was like, you know what, this is the future, like he gets it and he got it. And so I think they said within 5 days or something, they hired 100 engineers to work on Facebook.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, that's insane. I mean, that's like an entire staff of a lot of companies, right? But they were just like, yeah, let's throw tons at this. And so 100 engineers working on this. I always say that it's like every day there's new stuff, right? There's going to be new stuff and it'll take a while for it to become perfected. But I think what's really cool is that they're so dedicated to this that, when Facebook sees something and is so excited about it, that there's a reason they're excited about it.
Yeah. Wow. So aside from all like the advanced technical stuff, if somebody just sitting there in their room wants to get started with Facebook Live, can you just start with your phone?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of mix it up. So sometimes I'll do the more produced things through Wirecast or something like that. And I'll do overlays and I think that's just a branding thing. Like sometimes I would rather have my branding on the screen or be able to bring in stuff. But a lot of times I'll mix it up with, like, for example, for me, I'll do more inspirational kind of stuff and I'll just sit there and talk to people and kind of try and bring them inspiration or help motivate them or something like that. With that, I may want it to be a little less polished and just like from my phone and really kind of personal. And I've had really good results. But what's interesting is that, it's very early on. So obviously I don't have enough broadcasts to say how, what the data is like completely saying. But what I've noticed is when I do split screens, I usually get more viewers. And it's a lot more kind of that network effect afterwards where I get more like shares and views in the second or third day. When I do ones that are just myself, it's a little bit less. I think people will like that interaction of two people. And that's what's really been exciting is even when we were on another platform for our show on Blab, and we'd get maybe like at the most, like our top show ever was maybe 70 viewers total. And then when we did the same, we moved the show to Facebook Live more recently, and our first show had 1,000 views. And I was like, this is insane because we don't, for our page, especially the page for that show and stuff like that. I did that for my personal profile. My personal profile only has less than 1,000 people that I'm connected with on my personal profile. So I'm hitting like more than 100% of the number of my friends, quote unquote, are seeing that. Wow. And so I've heard of people getting 120% of even their fan page on Facebook, their business page in terms of views on a Facebook Live.
Wow, that's crazy. So definitely I'm going to make it a priority of mine to check out Facebook Live. I will report back to you and the listeners and let you know how it goes. One thing I wanted to ask, are there any brands or people doing any kind of live streaming really well, whether it's B2B, B2C, Periscope, Facebook Live, anyone you want to kind of call out that we can look to for an example?
Yeah, I think someone who, at least in my space, because I always try to learn from people. So Chalene Johnson, she does really good content, and she's great at repurposing it in multiple ways. So she was big on Periscope. Now she's kind of doing a dual cast people will sometimes have a phone that's broadcasting to Periscope and a second device that's broadcasting to Facebook Live or vice versa. And so she'll do a dual cast of both. And then she takes that and it becomes a podcast, or she takes that and it becomes, a podcast and other things. And she's great at the engagement, but she has a pretty large audience. That's the other thing to note. I think when you're just starting out, don't start out with like a Q&A or something like that, because that's something that you may not have enough people interacting, or they may be like too shy to actually interact, right?
Yeah.
So you can bring questions to it though. Let's say you get questions on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere else, then bring those questions in and say, so-and-so asked this question on Twitter. I'm going to answer that now, kind of thing. And that kind of, encourages people to ask more questions. So for her, she gets a lot of live questions because people are so used to her producing this content and they're used to engaging with her on there.
Awesome. And are there any businesses using live streaming effectively?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't really actually, I think a lot of businesses, since they're kind of, holding off or seeing what it's like or that kind of stuff, they're losing out. Because honestly, I have not seen a lot of businesses even broadcasting. And I would love to see that, because I think that, if I'm already interested in that brand, I want to see more of it. Right. So I think the one I've mentioned more recently that I like, I saw a broadcast that was really good, is Pick Your Plum. And they have, they're an e-commerce site, and they have like kind of craft supplies and things like that. And when they create content, it's very like commercial content. So they're talking about the kind of stuff that they have on the site or something like that. But since usually with them, they have kind of a time limit to it, which works really well, because they can say, oh, this is only available today or something like that. And that urgency works so incredibly well on live video. And then also they have a lot of personality. Like they found someone on their staff, or multiple people on their staff, who are just like, you feel like you're hanging out with them, right? You're just like, okay. And even if they don't have to have a crazy bubbly personality, but even if you feel like, I'm building a relationship with this person, and they seem like a good person, then I think that works really well for the business too.
Sure. And one thing I try to do in my mind is just imagine, like, if someone were just to walk in my door into my office, how would I interact with them? And so when I've done live Periscopes, I try to not become somebody who I'm not, but just try to pretend that person is right there in the room with me.
Right.
That's just a little mind hack for me that works to not get as nervous about it.
Yeah.
So I do have a couple other last questions. I know I've asked a lot of the questions. I want to give you a chance if there's anything I've left out, because a lot of this is unknown stuff to me. So feel free to jump in and mention anything that maybe I might have left out. But otherwise, I do have a couple other last questions. So one is very specific. I did a live Periscope with Rand Fishkin from Moz a few months ago. We were at a conference together, and I was asking him about his book. And then we shut off the broadcast, and I asked Rand if he would ever be interested in doing his own Periscoping. And he seemed, his comment was, "I don't think my life is that interesting enough." Which I don't know if he was being humble or if he really meant that or what, but if you were somebody like Rand, or maybe the face of a software company, what are maybe some ways that you would recommend that they use Periscope?
Yeah, and this is hilarious, because I always thought that if I was broadcasting, my life would consist of like me sitting on my computer and me hanging out with my dogs and my husband. That's pretty much my life. I'm like, I don't really have anything that exciting going on, usually. But it's not. I mean, there's so much. I think whether you're sharing, like for him, he's so incredibly knowledgeable. And people are fascinated by anything he has to say. I think, if he could probably go on there and just be like, "Hey guys, I'm hanging out with you," and that's it. And for him, since he's already kind of an influencer in the space, he probably would get people asking questions and that from even the very beginning. But I think same thing, like if you were treating it, like I mentioned earlier, like you were creating a blog post or you were creating content for social media anyway, it's just treat it like a different form factor of that, if that helps you like kind of overcome what am I going to talk about or what am I going to do. But you can mix in the more kind of casual stuff and just say, or like I said, I think for anything, there's inspirational content or fun content or interesting content. It could be an article you read that you want to talk about and, really discuss or hash out, or something that you learned. And I think that I've been probably in a lot of interviews lately, I've been talking about Brian Harris's kind of theory of learning out loud. And that's what we should all be doing all the time, is you learn out loud. As you learn things, you pass that along. Or if you have exciting announcements, you can talk about that. You can interview other people. There's so many ways that you can create a ton of different content that, people would still find interesting.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask one last question, and before I have you tell people where they can find you online and everything. This is going to come a little out of left field, and so I'm taking a small chance here to see, because I don't know if you've thought about this before. You probably have, but when I think about live broadcasting, I actually think about old live television or live radio as inspiration, because these are, high scale productions. The people on camera are super talented and experienced. So one person I often think of is Dave Letterman, right? As far as being on, I know it's not live, but being in a live TV situation, I look to how he kind of carries himself, how he acts, how he asks questions as kind of inspiration for how you can present yourself on live camera. Is there anyone or any TV show or anyone kind of from television or radio that you look to for inspiration?
I'm trying to think. I never really watched a lot of live TV. So I think people like that, though, would be a good example. Like any kind of late night host or something like that, like Jimmy Kimmel or something. He produces really fun content. And I think what's funny, for example, with Jimmy Kimmel, the human side is so important that people, like, he'll laugh in the middle of doing some kind of thing he's doing. And most people, if you were an actor or something, you'd say, that is so unprofessional. Like, that's not what we do, right? But I think it makes him that more likable, right? And so the key thing here is, and I keep on referencing a study a lot too that was done where someone who had a higher education or a lower education rather, but spilled their coffee was seen was thought of as more trustworthy than someone with a better education that didn't do anything wrong, Wait
a second. So break that down. Somebody that had a lower education?
Yes, someone who was less educated but spilled their coffee was regarded as more trustworthy in this experiment versus someone who had a better education but didn't do anything wrong, So I think to me that was really encouraging, because I was like, the realness of live video, the rawness, the kind of the risk, quote unquote, that you're taking by putting yourself out there, people really highly regard that. And people admire that, and they are like, this is a real person. So whether you're doing it a more produced way or just from your phone, we're humans, so we'll make mistakes or it won't be perfect, and that's okay. And that's something I think really encourages me. So I think that's a key thing to learn from that, is like, just do it and you're going to get better and you're going to improve, and people are going to appreciate the fact that you're putting that effort in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So this has been a super interesting interview for me, because like I said, you can tell I'm excited about getting into Facebook Live. So I'm very anxious to jump in and check that out. So awesome. Where can people find you online? Where would you like to direct them? Anything you'd like them to check out?
Sure. So I'm pretty active on Twitter, and you can follow me there at Alessandra Co. And I also I mostly do Facebook Live nowadays. So I do that for my personal profile, and from my business page, I have my page Influence Buzz, and also We Mean Business. But a really good way for people to kind of kickstart, I have some resources on my site. And if someone's interested in really kind of planning out their live content, they can go to influencebuzz.com/live workbook.
Awesome. And your Twitter spelled out is ALESSANDRACO.
Yeah, it's a long one, but you got it.
Awesome. Well, great. This has been a fantastic interview. Thanks so much for coming on the show on Experts on the Wire. And we'll see everyone next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, so I hope you enjoyed that interview with Alessandra. I know that I found a lot of value from that, and I hope to be experimenting maybe with Facebook Live in the future and maybe do some live broadcasts of this podcast. What I wanted to know was, is anyone out there doing Periscope or Facebook Live or Blab? Please leave me a tweet at Dan_Shure, SHURE. And just point me to your Periscope, your Facebook Live, your Blab, whatever kind of live streaming you're doing. I'd love to check it out, either for you or for your brand or for your company that you work for. I want to kind of get a feel for what some of you out there are doing with live streaming. And if you want, you can probably easily find me on Periscope. I'm just Dan Shure, SHURE. And I'll do Periscopes every once in a while, and you'll see those in my Twitter feed as well. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Experts in the Wire, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.